I don't play with lions. I don't play with those. I don't even do roller coasters. Wow.
Well, hello.
Scott Jennings gets dismantled on live national television. You have Minneapolis police officers speaking out against ICE and how it is being abusive against Minnesota police deputies. And we've got an incredible story involving Tim Dillon finally expressing how he has had enough with Iranian monarchists and what they are pressuring America to get involved in. The show today is massive. I don't want to waste much time with too much house cleaning at the top of the show, but I'm really looking forward to sharing all these stories with you all in just a bit. I do want to give you a few programming notes because moving forward, we will be doing Wednesdays as solo shows. And the bonus episode will be behind a paywall on Wednesdays. So something for our members. We want to give you something extra. So I'll be hosting shows on Wednesdays entirely by myself, unless I have a guest on to interview. And we will be having a bonus episode behind a paywall. So just one quick programming note on that. And if you're wondering, what am I watching? Welcome. Hi, you're watching The Young Turks. I'm your host, Anna Kasparian. Let's get to our first story.
We, as law enforcement community, have been receiving endless complaints about civil rights violations in our streets from US citizens. What we're hearing is they're being stopped in traffic stops or on the street with no cause and being forced to demand paperwork to determine if they are here legally. As this went on over the past 2 weeks, we started hearing from our police officers the same complaints as they fell victim to this while off duty. Every one of these individuals is a person of color who has had this happen to them.
Well, you just heard from Brooklyn Park, Minnesota Police Chief Mark Burley, who detailed that ICE is not only abusing ordinary American citizens or those suspected of being in the country illegally. It turns out ICE agents are also racially profiling and harassing actual sworn officers, police officers in Minnesota. Now, it is important to hear more from Burley and what he had to say about the experiences that deputies have had with ICE agents on the ground in Minneapolis and Minnesota in general. Because make no mistake about it, you will hear over and over again from defenders of the Trump administration or those who are, very concerned about carrying out immigration enforcement, raids, that no, this isn't happening. Everything is normal. Everything is above, above any possible criminality or illegality. You don't have to worry about anything. ICE is just trying to do their jobs. But you know what? Not according to, again, Brooklyn Park, Minnesota Police Chief Mark Burley. Let's hear more from what he had to say.
In Brooklyn Park, one particular officer that shared her story with me was stopped as she passed ICE going down the roadway. When they boxed her in, they demanded her paperwork, of which she's a US citizen and clearly would not have any paperwork. When she became concerned about the rhetoric and the way she was being treated, she pulled out her phone in an attempt to record the incident. The phone was knocked out of her hands, prevented her from recording it. The officer had their guns drawn during this interaction. And after the officer became so concerned, they were forced to identify themselves as a Brooklyn Park police officer in hopes of slowing the incident and de-escalating the incident down. The agents then immediately left after hearing this, making no other comments, no other apologies, just got in their vehicles and left. I wish I could tell you that this was an isolated incident. In fact, many of the chiefs standing behind me have similar incidents with their off-duty officers. If it is happening to our officers, it pains me to think of how many of our community members are falling victim to this every day.
Border Patrol enforcement of our immigration laws. You literally have militarized federal agents pulling over random people who don't look lily white to ask them for their papers, to ask them whether they're here in this country legally. Now look, there might be some who think that's totally okay. I don't fall in that category at all. Because those types of actions by militarized federal agents are in no way indicative of a free society. I don't want to see militarized law enforcement or federal agents on our streets, harassing and terrorizing ordinary people. And it's one thing to hear the types of comments you just heard from Police Chief Burley, from let's say a left-winger who has espoused views that are supportive of open borders, right? You can nitpick and you can say, oh, well, this person's got an agenda. Are you gonna make the same argument about this police chief? By the way, he wasn't the only member of law enforcement who's been raising red flags over what ICE has been carrying out. So let me give you a few other examples. There's Chief Axel Henry from the St. Paul Police. He had something to say too. He was quoted as saying, can we find a way to make sure that we can do these things, meaning enforce our immigration laws, without scaring the hell out of our community members and freaking everyone out? People are scared to death and afraid to go outside. Is this the America everyone wants to live in? This has gone beyond enforcing immigration laws. I mean, it had already gone beyond enforcing immigration laws well before the police chief, Burley, decided to hold this press conference. We're just gonna be okay with racially profiling people in America, which is a diverse country that has people from all over the world who came from other countries, sure, but might have been here for multiple generations. They just don't, they don't have blonde hair, light skin. Imagine pulling cops over to ask them for their papers. This is insane. This is absolutely insane. And I'm glad that local law enforcement decided to carry out this press conference and let the American people know what's really going on in the ground. Because yeah, I get it, our media is super polarized. Our media tends to serve validation to one political extreme or the other, but what's the reality? And the reality is we are normalizing militarized federal agents on our streets. And do we wanna live in that kind of society? My answer is no. I don't wanna live in that type of society. In fact, I thought the United States was supposed to be better than that. I thought the United States was supposed to stand out from other authoritarian countries by not allowing people who work for us to terrorize us. And when I say work for us, I mean that in every sense of the word. We pay their damn salaries. We pay them to enforce the laws that our elected representatives passed. ICE isn't supposed to go around coercing people, threatening people, shooting people, profiling people, but that's what's going on right now. It could have something to do with the fact that, Trump doesn't really care about basic things like training. I mean, he's a moron himself, not someone who's really interested in new ideas, new information, getting trained on doing his job properly. Not really something he personally is interested in. But ICE officers went from having 6 months of training, which I would venture to say still isn't enough, but okay. They went from 6 months of training to just 47 days of training. You wanna know why? Oh, I'm the 47th president. Oh, wouldn't it be cute if we cut down their training to 47 days? What a loser. Total, undeniable loser. I have grown, and it's not a new thing. This has been percolating for a while. I have grown increasingly distrustful of our government, and I am not in favor of concentrating more power in our government. Unfortunately, that has been the case. That's what has happened, okay, over the last several years, especially beginning with Trump's first administration. And Now we have a situation where we have militarized police officials, or I should say militarized federal agents, ICE officials, Border Patrol agents, roaming our streets, basically abusing people, racially profiling people. And I thought the mechanisms that we have in place to fight back against this type of authoritarianism, tyranny, harassment would maybe work. But here's the problem. It doesn't work when you don't have an opposition party that has, I don't know, courage, a little bit of fight in them. I mean, where are the Democrats on this issue? Other than tweeting about it, other than whining about it, other than putting statements out about it, which by the way, us American citizens can just do ourselves. We don't need to elect someone to do that for us. But they haven't done much other than that. It's so utterly frustrating and it's crazy. It's crazy. Now you literally have local law enforcement talking about how their own deputies are being racially profiled and harassed by militarized federal agents purporting to carry out immigration enforcement. Are they? Are they? Stories coming out regarding individuals who were arrested on January 6th for storming the Capitol. Looks like some of them have gotten hired as ICE officials, or I should say ICE agents. This is absolutely crazy. So this is also hurting the Republicans politically, because I know these piece of crap, cowardly politicians who might actually have an issue with what the Trump administration is doing, but aren't saying a damn thing about it. They'll only be moved to action if maybe they're starting to lose support among Republican voters. And it looks like, I mean, when it comes to independent voters, Trump is done, totally lost that coalition that he built in order to win the popular vote. But overall, when you look at the American electorate, where are their hearts and minds on the issue of ICE essentially terrorizing communities across the country? I shouldn't say across the country, terrorizing blue cities and towns across the country. Let's watch.
This was such a strength for the president of the United States. The net approval rating on Trump's administration program to deport immigrants who are in the country illegally. It was plus 18 points at the beginning of his presidency, net approval rating. That is very, very positive. It was one of the most popular things in the Trump administration agenda. But now you come over to this side of the screen, look at that. That's over a 25-point switcheroo in the negative direction. Now the program is way, way, way underwater at minus 8 points. Okay, the Trump administration is prioritizing deporting dangerous criminals or others. You go back to June, the majority of Americans, 53%, said the Trump administration was prioritizing deporting dangerous criminals compared to just 47% who said others. Come to this side. What do we have now? A complete switcheroo. Now what you see is the majority of the American people believe that the Trump administration is not prioritizing deporting dangerous criminals. In fact, they're prioritizing deporting others at 56%.
ICE even arrested some Native Americans. They detained Native Americans who, I don't know if they need to be informed about this. They have more of a right to be here than anyone else. And when it comes to local law enforcement and how the DOJ is handling some of the allegations against these agents and their, harassment and profiling of literal law enforcement deputies, it doesn't seem like they care too much at all about what's going on. In fact, they want to punish local law enforcement. So today, in fact, the Justice Department sent subpoenas to at least 5 Democratic officials in Minnesota. That included Governor Tim Walz, unsurprisingly, Mayor Jacob Frey of Minneapolis, and Mayor Coley Herr of St. Paul. Okay, so the subpoenas are related to policies on immigration enforcement efforts in the state. And their big gripe is that, the police are standing in our way when there's really no indication of that whatsoever. That's the excuse they usually use. And I get it. By the way, I get that there are very particular provisions in some sanctuary city and state laws that, if you ask me, don't make sense. The American people overwhelmingly want to deport individuals who are here illegally who have been convicted of crimes. So if you have the federal government asking municipalities and cities, hey, here is a retainer for this individual after they serve their sentence because we want to deport them. How about in that one very narrow instance, you work with them so they can't have something to hang their hat on as they're terrorizing ordinary people in communities like Minneapolis, St. Paul. But honestly, at this point, that's my only issue with these sanctuary city laws. When they do provide cover and refuse to comply in specific instances of someone who's been convicted, who is a criminal and should be deported. But other than that, the Trump administration has absolutely no justification for what we are seeing on our streets right now. The chaos and the intimidation tactics are the point. And I'm sure Trump is looking at the polling. He wants nothing more than constant validation and ass kissing. It is pathetic. I've never seen a grown man be this obsessed with himself, but here we are. And so I'm sure he's seen some of this polling, and wouldn't you know it, he's softening his message a little bit when it comes to, the 37-year-old mom who was shot in the face by an ICE agent in Minnesota, Renee Good. Now, if you can remember previously, Trump said of Renee Good immediately after she was shot to death by an ICE agent, quote, "She behaved horribly and then she ran him over. She didn't try to run him over, she ran him over." Now, we've all seen the videos featuring Renee Good getting shot to death by an ICE agent, and in no way did she run an ICE agent over, in no way. And maybe he got some backlash for being a disgusting creep and defaming an American citizen based on nothing, based on, he hadn't even watched the video yet, by the way. He saw the video for the first time during an interview. But now he's changed his tune a little bit. But of course, there's gotta be a narcissistic reason why. So see if you can catch it. Let's watch.
They're gonna make mistakes sometimes. ICE is gonna be too rough with somebody, or they're dealing with rough people. They're gonna make a mistake. Sometimes it can happen. We feel terribly. I felt horribly when I was told that the young woman who was had the tragedy. It's a tragedy. It's a horrible thing. Everybody would say, ICE would say the same thing. But when I learned her parents, and her father in particular I hope he still is, but I don't know, was a tremendous Trump fan. He was all for Trump, loved Trump. And it's terrible. I was told that by a lot of people. They said, oh, he loves you. He was I hope he still feels that way. I don't know, it's a hard situation. But her father was a tremendous, and parents were tremendous Trump fans. It's so sad. It just happens. It's terrible.
It just happens? It's sad because her parents are Trump supporters, that's why it's sad? You don't think it's sad that because of your policies and your hiring practices when it comes to ICE, you have created chaotic situations on American streets that have led to people getting killed? How many people who have been detained by ICE during your second term have died while in ICE custody? So far this year is set to break a new record. And we already know about how many literal American citizens have been detained by ICE for being suspected of being undocumented. Even though they say over and over again, I'm an American citizen, I'm an American citizen. Who the hell walks around with immigration papers? Who the hell walks around with their birth certificate? I guess if you have a little bit of a tan, tint in your skin, you better walk around with your birth certificate. You better walk around with your papers. We live in a free society, that's what this is? No, this isn't a free society. Hasn't been in a long, long time. I mean, you couple this with people getting confronted by cops at their residences because they posted something critical of Israel. Is that what happens in a free and open society? Is that what happens in a democracy? The Democrats who were fear-mongering about the loss of democracy the most, of course, only during the election, suddenly super quiet, super quiet. Congress is useless, okay? These elected lawmakers, these political leaders are useless, too busy fundraising, not enough time to actually do a damn thing to protect the American people from what the federal government is currently up to, from what the White House is currently up to, hiring a bunch of criminals who don't respect our rule of law, don't respect our democratic process and the outcome of our general election. Those are the people who are getting hired for ICE right now. And rather than having appropriate training, which I can't believe was only 6 months, but it was, they're getting 47 days. Congratulations, America. This is what tyranny looks like. I hope you enjoy the armed federal agents in your towns, right-wing voters, but you probably won't. That's the thing, because we're so divided and political actions are motivated by partisanship. So it's only the blue cities and the blue states that are dealing with this. But I just want to ask you, if you happen to be a conservative or you happen to vote for Republicans, how would you feel if there were militarized federal agents roaming your streets and asking you for your papers? And do you want to live in a country like that? Because I don't. We got to take a break. We'll be right back. Thank you to CDN Norstog, who gifted 1 TYT membership. We will be having a bonus episode behind a paywall today. No Operation Joy since Cenk is out, but we will pick it up again next week. Bach says, as a Minnesotan, I'm mad they refuse to work with ICE. Instead of having them in courts and jails, they are in the streets. It's dangerous and I don't like it. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on that one thing. If ICE puts out a detainer for someone who's here illegally, someone who has been convicted of a crime, just comply with that. I mean, everyone wants people who are here illegally committing crimes to be deported, unless you're crazy. But honestly, Box, at this point, I think the Trump administration is using it as an excuse. I think they were gonna do what they've been doing anyway. I don't trust them. They're not honest actors here. I mean, Trump goes from accusing Renee Good of running over an ICE agent to suddenly like, oh, it's so sad. It's so sad. You know, I hear that her parents are big Trump supporters. It's so sad. He is a piece of crap. And this kind of behavior that we're seeing on our streets, it's becoming normalized. And unless we do something to fight back against it now, it will become a mainstay in American society. And I don't want that. Mark Douglas writes in and says, Greenland, when should I take a cruise there to see our new property? I'm gonna talk about Greenland in the next segment, so just hang in there for that story. Let's go to My Love, Nebraska. Anna has nothing to apologize for. She's been expressing her unique viewpoints as everyone is entitled to their opinion. All right, let's go to Joe S., New York, who says, how this monster can make anything about him when speaking about Renee Good is atrocious. What kind of maniac speaks like this? Oh yeah, our president. It's just shameful, and it's amazing to me how easily people are willing to accept government overreach as long as it's happening to the people they disagree with politically. If this were happening in, I don't know, West Virginia, I'd be furious because I see all Americans, regardless of how they vote, as my people. But we've moved so far away from having that mindset of wanting to look out for each other that we are literally willing to cheer on brutalizing the other side. Solid Mirage Vanguard says, one thing I've noticed, this mask hypocrisy is peak clown world. ICE agents ninja masked up, randomly profiling every brown dude eating a taco or delivering falafel. Sir, your skin tone triggered my patriotism. You wrote that in a really funny way and I wanted to laugh, but I know that this is a serious issue, so I won't. Let's go to another comment from Solid Mirage Vanguard. But the second a Hamas fighter wraps a keffiyeh, instant terrorism, ban all masks, send sanctions now. Same crew that loves ICE balaclavas suddenly discovers masks are pure evil. Yep. All right, one more comment from this individual. I'll share it though when we come back from the break. All right, welcome back to the show, everybody. I wanted to read a comment in our super chats from Solid Mirage Vanguard, who says, the switch up is Olympic level. Mental gymnastics, gold medal goes to masks equal freedom when we, meaning the right, do racial profiling at 7-Eleven, but evil cowardice 7,000 miles away. And that's referring to individuals, wearing keffiyehs in Palestine. Masks for me, not for thee. All right, we've got a lot more to get to, so let's get into Greenland, because I hope, if you're a normal American, you felt some level of embarrassment and shame when Trump sent a note to European leaders and whined about the Nobel Peace Prize yet again, and tied it to us engaging in potential imperialism, especially when it comes to Greenland. So without further ado, let's get to the details.
Americans do not want to pay higher rates at the grocery store because the president wants Greenland. They don't want to do that. They don't even understand why we need Greenland in terms of actual sovereign American territory. Why does this come up? Well, because it turns out that we're about to launch apparently a new trade war over Greenland.
Trump's crusade to annex Greenland is so unhinged that even Ben Shapiro is speaking out against it. Although Shapiro might be more motivated by, conserving resources for other foreign entanglements, if you get what I mean. But nonetheless, the president insists that US conquest is necessary for national security. National security gets cited as the reason for all sorts of depravity in our federal government, doesn't it? But nonetheless, the story gets worse. Wait till you get to Trump leaking text messages that he has with European leaders. But over the weekend, Trump threatened to impose these tariffs on several European countries, specifically if Denmark refuses to allow for the sale of Greenland. So, here's what he wrote. We have subsidized Denmark and all of the countries of the European Union and others for many years by not charging them tariffs or any other forms of remuneration. Okay, so look, free trade definitely did a number on jobs and the working class in America, there's no question. Unfortunately, that ship has sailed, and if you actually want to reverse it, you would have to do it methodically, and you'd have to do it by prioritizing the concerns of workers first and foremost, but that's not what Trump is doing here, okay? What Trump is doing here is he is essentially punishing Americans because European leaders aren't bending the knee to him when it comes to handing over Greenland. That's what this is about. Further, he writes, now after centuries, it is time for Denmark to give back. World peace is at stake. China and Russia want Greenland, and there is not a thing that Denmark can do about it. So Trump feeling real good about himself, realizing, oh yeah, that's right, we've got this massive war machine. A war machine that allows us to, break international laws, commit war crimes, and not have to worry about any of the consequences because our military is bigger than yours. There's nothing you can do about it. So he's feeling pretty cocky and essentially saying, like, look, we are the bullies on the international stage. So if we see something we want, we're just gonna take it. Just like we did with the Venezuelan oil, we're just gonna take it. There's nothing you can do about it. Now I get that some people get a rise out of that. They're like, oof, I like that power. I, on the other hand, and I hope there are a lot of Americans who agree with me, want to live in the type of global environment where people look up to our country, where people are envious of what we have as a country. They look at the freedom we have here. They look at how we don't want to cause harm to the international community, right? We actually want to collaborate in ways that are mutually beneficial, but that's not the country we live in, right? All the like fantasies that we were taught in our propagandized public education. And I do mean that. When you find out that Robert Maxwell, a notorious Mossad agent, published our history and social studies books, yeah, we were propagandized big time, big time. But here we have this situation where it's clear, there's no shadow of a doubt here, that the US is not this, it's not the pinnacle of peace. No one's thinking about how we fought the Nazis anymore. We're the bullies on the international stage, and it's embarrassing. But here's more from Trump. Starting on February 1st, 2026, all of the above mentioned countries, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, France, Germany, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, and Finland, will be charged a 10% tariff on any and all goods sent to the United States of America. On June 1st, 2026, the tariff will be increased to 25%, a tariff that will make goods that Americans buy far more expensive. So punishing his own people because he is so much of a little bitch that he needs to have a temper tantrum because the international community, European leaders aren't just willy-nilly handing him what he wants. By the way, why does he want Greenland? I mean, is it gonna benefit ordinary Americans? Of course not. But there are definitely business interests that are eyeing Greenland. Peter Thiel and Elon Musk definitely eyeing Greenland for their little anarcho-capitalist projects. Everything Trump does is for himself and his donors. That's it. Trump stated that those tariffs would remain in place until Greenland is officially purchased by the United States. Now, what do the people in Greenland think? Do they want to be a US colony? No, of course they don't. But that doesn't seem to matter to Trump because we're the bullies and we've got the big military. We've got the Pentagon, which can't pass a single audit that we might be sending $1.5 trillion to. Trump is also refusing to rule out a military invasion of Greenland because of course. Now, European leaders are responding with some outrage, although I feel a little uncomfortable saying that, especially when we get to Macron's text messages to Trump. But before we do, let's hear from European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and French President Emmanuel Macron.
Arctic security can only be achieved together. And this is why the proposed additional tariffs are a mistake, especially between long-standing allies. The European Union and the United States have agreed to a trade deal last July. And in politics, as in business, a deal is a deal.
Without collective governance, cooperation gives way to relentless competition. Competition from the United States of America through trade agreements that undermine our export interests, demand maximum concessions, and openly aim to weaken and subordinate Europe, combined with an endless accumulation of new tariffs that are fundamentally unacceptable, even more so when they are used as leverage against territorial sovereignty.
Okay, I'm not really interested in the theater anymore, okay? So your speeches don't matter. What matters is how you communicate and how you interact with Trump behind the scenes. So why don't we get to that? Because Trump did what a Twitch streamer would do and leaked his private messages with Macron. Now, on one hand, it's embarrassing because he's the president of the United States and he probably shouldn't do that. On the other hand, Macron is embarrassing, incredibly embarrassing, because look at how he sucks up to Trump behind the scenes. Oh, I'm gonna give my speech, and in my speech, I'm gonna, oh, Trump, you're being a bad boy, very bad boy. Behind the scenes, though, in private, here's what Macron really sounds like. My friend, we are totally in line on Syria, Okay, let's pause for a second. Just a quick break and tangent for Syria. Syria is currently being led by an Al-Qaeda terrorist. Former Al-Qaeda terrorist. Al-Qaeda carried out 9/11, killed thousands of our people on our soil. Just a reminder. And I don't know if you've seen some of the horrific videos out of Syria over the last several days, but the security forces in Syria, under the leadership of said terrorist, are slicing women's throats, terrorizing people based on ideological differences. Oh, you agree on Syria? Okay, cute. Let's move on. By the way, Trump, of course, salivated over the handsome demeanor of Syria's current terrorist leader. Let's move on. Macron further says, we can do great things on Iran. Macron is a piece of crap. I do not understand what you are doing on Greenland. Let us try to build great things. One, I can set up a G7 meeting after Davos in Paris on Thursday afternoon. I can invite the Ukrainians, the Danish, the Syrians, and the Russians in the margins. Let us have a dinner together in Paris, together on Thursday before you go back to the Emmanuel. Go back to us, or go back to the US, sorry, Emmanuel. Okay, so I love the tough guy act. It's not even that tough, but like honestly, the faux, oh, I'm gonna push back in public, but privately, it's like, how can I pleasure you? How can I get on my knees faster? Trump is also texting with the Norwegian prime minister, and here's what he sent him on Sunday, and this is kind of embarrassing. Considering your country decided not to give me the Nobel Peace Prize for having stopped 8 wars plus, I no longer feel an obligation to think purely of peace. Homeboy, you never thought purely of peace. Trump has thought only purely of himself and what benefits him. And last night, Trump decided I'm gonna play this game where I pretend like the Nobel Peace Prize doesn't really mean much to me. Let's watch.
I don't care about the Nobel Prize. First of all, a very fine woman felt that I deserved it and really wanted me to have the Nobel Prize, and I appreciate that. If anybody thinks that Norway doesn't control the Nobel Prize, they're just kidding. They have a board, but it's controlled by Norway, and I don't care what Norway says. But I really don't care about that. What I care about is saving lives, and I think I've saved tens of millions of lives. If you look at India, Pakistan, just as won 2 nuclear powers, you look at so many of the countries that were in a 30, in some cases, a 35-year war, and they got it done. We stopped 8 wars, and maybe we'll be stopping a 9th very soon. We'll see.
You ripped up the Iran nuclear deal in your first term, and then proceeded to have a complete meltdown and temper tantrum in your second term after Iran didn't negotiate for a new nuclear deal fast enough. You bombed their nuclear sites on behalf of the real president of the United States, Benjamin Netanyahu. That man does not value peace at all. He believes in taking things by force. He believes that as long as you have this largest, strongest military, you can do whatever you want. You can kidnap world leaders. Even after said world leaders offer you everything you want, you'll kidnap them anyway. And pretend like you did so on behalf of the American people due to the prevalence of drug overdoses in the country. F off. This guy couldn't care less about the American people, and that much is abundantly clear. I'm just gonna leave you with this. A woman who shouldn't have resigned from her congressional seat. And yes, I say that as someone who has many disagreements with her. But at least she had a spine in calling Trump out. Now she's gone. And there aren't very many Republicans who are willing to push back against Trump's depravity, especially as it pertains to foreign policy. So former Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene writes, we are approaching $40 trillion in debt and Social Security is going to be insolvent by 2033. Is anyone even talking about how much it's going to cost the American people to take over Greenland? Saying it's for your safety is not sufficient. We've heard that one before and it didn't turn out so well. By the way, the whole national security argument, we actually have a military base in Greenland. And Greenland's like, yo, if you want to expand that military base for national security purposes, we will allow it. It's not about national security. It's about natural resources and unregulated land to benefit, the tech titans and the deplorable billionaire goons and ghouls that surround him and fund his campaigns. That's what this is about. Anyway, let's take a break. When we come back, I want to revisit the topic of Iran because, well, I'm happy to report that Tim Dillon is about as fed up as I am when it comes to Iranian monarchists. We'll be right back.
Norway.
Jenna Buzz writes in and says, our mall here in Minnesota is made up of immigrant-owned stores. People here legally, yet afraid of the ICE presence that circles our mall. Tensions are high. Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point. It's not about enforcing immigration laws. If you look at deportation numbers, it's really not that different from what we've seen from previous administrations. In fact, the Obama administration, Obama himself is still the deporter in chief. This is about punishing and terrorizing cities that the Trump administration has beef with, that has issues with the local politicians there or the governor of the state. That's what this is about. I mean, Trump's like, oh, these immigration raids are super important in rooting out fraud. The prosecutors tasked with investigating fraud in the state have now stepped down from their positions over these ICE raids. You keep pardoning fraudsters. In fact, there's this one fraudster who he pardoned in 2021. She gets released, or her sentence is commuted. And then she proceeds to engage in even more fraud. And guess what? He just pardoned her again. Okay, like, you don't care about fraud. I mean, you are fraud. Everything about him is fraud. Like, it's insane, but okay. All right, let's move on to some of our members. Christina Lisa Brown says, Anna looks gorgeous, thank you. Brother Monk Drum says, because ICE is basically the Proud Boys. Honestly, yeah, it's true. I mean, certainly some of the individuals who were there on January 6th are now working as ICE agents with only 47 days of training. I'm sure they don't have an axe to grind in these liberal cities, right? Aurora 4 says, Congress knows about this. They know everything that we know, so therefore they know it before we do, and yet here we are. It almost feels like last year's news, they're not doing or moving fast. And yeah, there are lawsuits, but as we know, those lawsuits take a long time. And I think more than anything, everything that's been happening, especially over the last several weeks, shows you just how fragile our system of checks and balances really is. Because if one branch of government just decides, and in this case it's the White House, we don't care about the rule of law, we're gonna do whatever we want and we're gonna do it by force. Okay, then what? Anyway, all right, I got a few more seconds. Let's go to Mintman87, who's been a member for 23 months. I wonder how many lawsuits ICE will be involved with when it's all said and done. We're gonna have to wait and see. Let's get back to the show. the show, everyone. I'm Anna Kasparian. If you haven't liked or shared the stream, just wanted to request that you do so now. If you're enjoying the show, it's a great, free, easy way to help spread the message of TYT and the hard work that we do here. And if you haven't rung the bell, please do so. It's the only way that you'll get notified when we post new content. And by the way, it does feel like the algorithm right now is kind of working against us. So any bit of support, anything that you can do to help us with the algorithm is much appreciated. You can also become a member, tyt.com/join. All right, I wanted to revisit the topic of those demonstrations, some of which ended up being incredibly, violent due to the sheer numbers of people who were killed. I wanted to revisit them because some interesting stuff has happened over the long holiday weekend that I wanted to comment on. So without further ado, let's get to the story.
I don't give a about Iran either. Sorry. Throw them out if you don't like them. It has nothing to do with me. And the fact that the idea that I have to give a flying you should be standing with Iran. Shut the up. Will you shut the up? If they want to throw the bums who run Iran out, throw them the out.
Well, it looks like comedian Tim Dillon has had it with Iranian-American monarchists demanding that Americans essentially drop everything to support a regime change war in a foreign country that we really should have nothing to do with, and that, of course, is Iran. Now, in a little bit, you'll hear why Tim Dillon is so fed up with these foreign entanglements. But before we do, it is worth getting a clearer picture on what was really happening on the ground in Iran and how the protests devolved into bloody chaos. Now, American press, I think, has done a pretty poor job in reporting that story because they just take what pro-regime change ghouls have to say at face value and they just regurgitate it. But luckily, the Financial Times decided to do some journalism, to do some reporting and try to get a better sense of the nuances on the ground in Iran. And so it turns out that the initial government response or regime response to the demonstrations was pretty restrained. And government officials were actually looking for ways to appease the demonstrators' economic concerns. Because if you can remember, when the story first broke, when we first learned of demonstrations taking place in Iran, it was widely reported that it was due to economic frustrations, okay? Now, let's get to the Financial Times reporting. As they note, testimonies from the scenes of the unrest, some spoken directly to the FT, in addition to those smuggled out through intermediaries, reveal a muddied account of the turmoil itself in which agitators mingled with genuine protesters. Let me repeat that last part again. In which agitators mingled with genuine protesters. Now, I want to be clear. I believe that there were organic demonstrations taking place in Iran. I'm not denying that at all. But what I want to be abundantly clear about is that those organic protests immediately got co-opted by the provocateurs, by the agitators for their own purposes. Quote, in a few days, the numbers were growing, but there wasn't an atmosphere of fear. I did not see any violence, not from our side, not from the government. That's from a history professor in Iran who joined the demonstrations. The organic demonstrators, of course. So he notes, no, we're not. I mean, there wasn't a violent reaction from the regime initially. But then things took a sudden turn immediately. That changed at 8 p.m. on Thursday, January 8th, when mass crowds appeared to flood the streets in response to a call by Reza Pahlavi, the exiled son of the Shah deposed in the 1979 revolution that brought the Islamic Republic to power. So here you have a man who hasn't lived in Iran for 47 years, provoking people in Iran, giving them orders on what to do and how to do it. And well, there's more. He and his US-based Persian monarchists certainly muddied the waters. And I think that they did more damage to the protesters than anything else. And in fact, a lot of those protesters agree with me on that. So luckily I had the opportunity to, by the way, meet one of those pro-regime change Iranians on Piers Morgan's show. And I want to go to the first video on this so you can get a sense of, well, their mindset.
There is a huge hypocrisy in the way that most people in the West have even paid attention to what's going on in Iran over the last 2 weeks. In just 3 days, we don't have an exact death toll, but it could be more people than have been killed in Gaza in over the 3 years that we had that war, 2.5 years that we had that war.
That's
but
preposterous.
why are you saying, oh my God? I mean, can I speak? Can we talk about the fact that in 1979, this government came in and launched an ideological war that all of you are victims to, that are spewing these talking points. Why? Because they wanted to. Remember ISIS that we were all afraid of?
Why? Because we're not foot soldiers for the Zionists? Is that why? Because we're not foot soldiers for Zionists? The same Zionists that are trying to co-opt an organic uprising in Iran and essentially ruin it? Is that why? That is why. That is why. Now we're gonna hear more from our exchange in just a minute. But before we do, she brings up the issue of hypocrisy. And in fact, a lot of Persian Americans keep making this point over and over again. Oh, you're a hypocrite because you spoke out against the mass slaughter of Palestinians, and you have nothing to say about the Iranian protesters who have been met with violence from the Iranian regime. Okay, so let me speak slowly so these people can understand the very obvious difference, okay? So in the case of Israel and their mass slaughter campaigns in the Middle East, we the American people, for the most part, if you look at polling, do not support it, are against it. But we are forced through our federal government, because the Israel lobby has basically bought both sides of the political aisle, we are forced to send our resources to a genocidal regime known as Israel so they can carry out the mass slaughter of innocents in the Middle East, particularly in Palestine, particularly in the West Bank and Gaza. They don't stop there, of course. They also carry out their terroristic acts in places like Lebanon, Syria. I mean, you get the point. They drag us into wars on their behalf, including attempting to drag us into a disastrous regime change war with Iran. Now, in the case of what the Iranian regime does against its own people, which of course I'm against, we're not forced to support it. We're not forced to fund it. In fact, the US government has implemented crushing sanctions against Iran. So yeah, there's a big difference. Because I'm sure if you poll the American people, the majority of us are against the Iranian regime raining terror on their own people. The only difference is in the case of Gaza, we have a federal government that supports the slaughter, that forces us to use our resources and forces our government and economic system to go into massive amounts of debt to funnel resources to Israel so they carry out mass slaughter. And by the way, the woman that you just heard make that disgusting argument that Iran in just a few short days slaughtered more people in Iran than Israel has killed in Gaza. We don't know what the official numbers are in Gaza, by the way. I don't think that 70,000 or over 70,000 is the accurate number. I think the number is actually much, much higher, okay? But let's say we all accept that the number is 70,000 people killed in Gaza. This weirdo thinks that 70,000 people were killed in Iran in like a week. By the way, she denies that Israel has engaged in a mass slaughter campaign in Gaza. It's important to know that. Anyway, I don't care what she thinks, and I want to be very clear. I don't care what any Zionist thinks about my views on Iran, because their views on Iran are the most irrelevant thing on the planet to me. They have an agenda, and that agenda is to get our soldiers to fight a regime change war in the Middle East, in Iran, on Israel's behalf. And if they think that, they can suck it. If they think that they're gonna shame me for not crying about what the Iranian regime allegedly did against its own people, it's not gonna work. Because here's the thing, you have to have a moral high ground in order for me to even consider feeling guilty, even consider feeling shame. But I'm not gonna feel shame when you're sitting there denying the atrocities and genocide committed, that's continuing to be committed, by the way, by Israel. It's that simple. And if you don't like it and you're gonna do your little TikTok videos about it, go ahead. But that has no bearing on my opinions on foreign policy. Most entitled people on the planet. Anyway, let's hear more from our exchange.
The people of Iran deserve the type of leadership and government they want. And I hate the fact that an organic demonstration has effectively been co-opted by Israeli interests who brag almost on a daily basis at this point about how they have Mossad on the ground. Mossad bragged about it. Amichai Eliyahu, who is the cultural minister in Israel, bragged about it. Israeli papers are bragging about it. Mike Pompeo, former Secretary of State, is bragging about it. Okay, having those types of insidious actors co-opting that demonstration is going to be to the detriment of Iran. And if Iranians want freedom, installing a Shah, installing a monarch who hasn't lived in the country for 47 years makes absolutely no sense.
It's that simple. It's not up to Iranian Americans who live in America to decide on behalf of the Iranian people who their leader should be, especially when we're talking about a guy who hasn't been in Iran for 47 years and wants to literally be a monarch. I don't know about you guys, but I'm personally against dictatorships and I'm personally against monarchy. Okay? Bunch of Iranian Americans trying to pressure me to change my mind about that isn't gonna work. Because it kind of touches on your core values. Anyway, it turns out I was onto something, by the way, because according to a protester who spoke to the Financial Times, the opposition abroad hijacked our protests, said one woman who joined in the rallies and opposes Pahlavi. Otherwise, things were moving forward and we might have gained concessions from the regime. Instead, the violence and crackdown pushed people back with nothing to show but deaths and destruction. Interesting, yeah. Well, the agitators also had access to certain weaponry. I wonder where they got that from, that ordinary Iranians don't have access to. So one demonstrator in Tehran told the Financial Times that there were groups of men in black clothes, agile and quick. They would set one dustbin on fire and then quickly move to the next target. Okay, well, I mean, that's just a few witnesses. Can't really mean much, right? Let's go to another one. Another witness in Western Tehran told the Financial Times he saw about a dozen fit men looking like commandos, dressed in similar black clothing, running through the area and calling on people to leave their homes and join the protests. Quote, they were definitely organized, but I don't know who was behind them, he said. I mean, you have Israeli papers, you have Israeli media, you have the former US Secretary of State and former CIA, head of CIA, Mike Pompeo, bragging about how it's Mossad. So let me understand something. When they tell us, are we just supposed to ignore that and not believe them? Because they tell us. So when they tell us, I choose to believe them. So you have organic protests, which by the way, were spurred through economic frustrations, which are largely a problem in Iran because of the sanctions that the US has implemented against Iran on behalf of Israel. Of course, we take our marching orders from a foreign country, you see, that we haven't elected. And then those organic protests get co-opted by an insidious force in the region, and that's of course Israel and Mossad. And how does that benefit the Iranian people? How does it benefit the Iranian people to have, foreign interference with their demonstrations and protests? All right, so hundreds of Iranian security forces were also killed in ways that are similar to Israel's barbarism, which really stood out to me. So some were burned to death, others were beheaded. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, sorry, I'm mispronouncing the name, I apologize. Well, they described the unrest as day 13 of Israel's 12-day war against Iran in June. Now, another thing that happened that's worth mentioning, and this is according to the Jerusalem Post on January 8th, Iranian protesters attack Palestinian ambassador's residence, injure ambassador. Around 200 protesters stormed the residence of the Palestinian Authority's ambassador in Tehran injuring Salam al-Zawawi, an embassy staff, and causing extensive damage, Iranian media reported. The ambassador was sent to the hospital because of the attack. So I'm just curious, does anyone who's watching this right now believe that Iranian citizens are real fired up about the Palestinian ambassador? So much so that 200 of them are gonna storm her office and her residence and try to physically harm her? What group of people on the international stage would have an interest in that? Okay. But I want to be clear, the Iranian regime engaged in violence against their own people. I don't deny that. Now, fog of war, I don't know the full details of what happened on the ground. But here's what I know for sure. I'm not going to sit on a Piers Morgan panel and be talked down to by a moron who thinks that I'm stupid and I don't see what's happening clearly. I see what's happening clearly. It's obvious. Regardless, Tim Dillon doesn't think any of this is America's problem. Here's what he had to say about it.
If they want to throw the bums who run Iran out, throw them the out. But the idea that the United States of America, when people can't afford houses and they can't afford health care, spends all its time talking about the Middle East and Arabs and Jews and religion and the temple and slaughtering a heifer in Iran and Sunnis and Shiites. Get what the is going on? Truly, what the is going on? That we're told, well, is Iran Sunni or Shia? What is happening? Okay? Our own country is being destroyed and it's going down the toilet.
True. Now, Tim Dillon, of course, is an American. And one thing that's clear is the American government doesn't seem to care much about what the American people have to say. But the White House, regardless of who's running it, could be Democrat, could be Republican, doesn't matter, is governed by the Knesset and the Israeli prime minister. So eventually, I have no doubt that they're gonna get their way and the US will probably be dragged into an ongoing, disastrous regime change war in Iran. But I just want to remember, I want all of us to remember that as we sink deeper and deeper into debt, we're at 40 trillion at this point. We already spent over $1 trillion just last year servicing our debt, just paying the interest on that debt. When our country collapses, I want you all to give yourself a pat on the back for helping to build Israel's empire while destroying and destabilizing multiple countries in the Middle East. We gotta take a break. When we come back, I don't know what we're gonna talk about. I'm taking forever with these stories, but there's a lot to get to, don't miss it.
Every day, the Young Turks delivers 2 hours of solid, fact-based, timely news and progressive commentary on all the day's most important stories. We keep our viewers informed while also providing perspective and insight on the news we cover, so you understand not only what's happening, but also what's happening behind the scenes, the stories behind the stories.
We play musical chairs and put these children in one awful detention facility to the next. That's what's happening at the border.
The things that got him banned, he's still spreading. So presumably, I think it's reasonable to say that if you allow him back on the website, he's going to do it again.
Any legal voter that we deem not willing to vote for my side shouldn't vote because it'll replace me that's supposed to vote for my side. That's not how voting works. That's not how democracy works.
And while many people following today's political news can get discouraged about the direction of the nation and the world, that's not us. At TYT, we're genuinely optimistic about the future, and with good reason. Today, wide majorities of Americans agree with our progressive stances on issues ranging from healthcare and education to climate, immigration, and wages. The rising generation of young people are also overwhelmingly progressive in their political beliefs and policy objectives, and they're increasingly flexing their muscle as voters and activists to demand change from our elected officials. The traditional mainstream media is mostly AWOL. They, along with the government and many other cherished institutions, have been captured by corporate interests. Audiences sense that they're not getting the whole story or even the truth from once trusted outlets, whether broadcasting cable TV news networks or national newspapers and magazines. The antidote is the Young Turks. Unlike mainstream corporate outlets, we're not beholden to corporate advertisers, the defense contractors, to Wall Street, or to Big Pharma, and we don't carry water for the Republican or Democratic parties. So watch us Monday to Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, and join the thousands of progressives around the globe who tune in every day for TYT's unmatched, award-winning content and see what it's like to experience a news organization that only answers to you.
Indisputable, exclusive, disputable, exclusive. We brought you this first. No other news agency has this video. No other news agency has this story.
Every week on Indisputable, we do original, exclusive, investigative reporting you'll find nowhere else.
Our reports have been viewed by millions. Hosted by Sean King, Ben Crump, Senator John Ossoff.
You, through your investigative reporting, unearthed very troubling allegations about specific forms of abuse and discrimination in the federal prison system.
We catching these cases on camera. Just imagine the things that we don't see.
Our groundbreaking investigations and exclusive interviews bring you the real voices no one else wants you to hear. We tell the stories.
Imagine a prison that is so racist, the corrections officers contact me. That is a life or death situation being created. A black woman who was driving for Uber was allegedly assaulted by a white male passenger. After we got involved, roughly 24 hours later, the police all of a sudden opened up an investigation. What was going through your mind when bullets were simply flying inside of your vehicle?
Honestly, I thought I was going to die.
Did these officers ever say that you fit the description of somebody they were looking for? Did they say that?
Never.
Okay, that means they lied.
And we want you to be part of our truth-telling movement. Send pictures and video of stories no one else is telling and a 1 or 2 paragraph summary of the story to Indisputable's exclusive tip line at indvideos@tyt.com.
If you have more information about what's happening at this particular facility, please let me know.
Together, we're challenging the system, and together, we're making a difference.
I have the entire background to this story, and it is going to make your blood boil.
Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Ritchie, unveiling the truth, empowering the people. Weekdays at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, 11:30 a.m. Pacific.
There was a point where I did want to throw hands, but I'm bigger than you.
I know you are, but what am I?
All right, everyone, welcome back to TYT. I'm your host, Anna Kasparian, and let me tell you about Mobile Noble. If you're tired of the doom scroll, you're not alone. In fact, the entire system is designed to keep you glued to your screen, while the billionaire owners of big wireless profit from every minute you're on it. But what if you could break that cycle and get rewarded for it? Our partners over at Noble Mobile have a revolutionary idea. They pay you to use your phone less. On their No Bull plan, you get unlimited data for just $50 a month. And starting today, you can get cash back. It's a pretty big deal. You can get $40 off your first month and try Noble for just $10. Plus, the unused data you don't use gets you cash back. So if you're paying over $50 for your wireless plan, there's really no reason not to switch. So go to tyt.com/switch and you can switch to Noble. Again, that's tyt.com/switch. Okay, let's get to our next story. There are no winners in this story. I want to start off with that. Now, as I give you the details, you can decide for yourselves whether there are any winners to this story, because it turns out that Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro was very offended after the Harris campaign decided to do something that I was actually pretty shocked by. They did basic vetting of considerations for Harris's running mate. And of course, we all know that Josh Shapiro was one of the considerations. And well, we now have some excerpts from his forthcoming book that indicate that the Harris team wanted to know if he had connections to Israeli intelligence. was he potentially a double agent? That is a valid question to ask. Now, why do I say that? I'm gonna give you the details. But before we do, let me just note that unsurprisingly, this revelation has led to accusations of anti-Semitism, despite Shapiro's history and past working for the Israelis. So that critical part typically gets left out of the comments made by those accusing the Harris camp of being anti-Semites, which, by the way, I mean, okay. My biggest gripe with Kamala Harris, other than the fact that she seemed to have difficulty speaking in public, was the fact that she really didn't differentiate herself in any way from Biden, especially on the topic of Gaza. So she carried water for the Israelis during her campaign, and it hurt her campaign, but that doesn't matter. She's an anti-Semite because her campaign vetted Josh Shapiro and asked him, legitimate questions through the vetting process, which is what you're supposed to. They ask if you're having extramarital affairs and things like that during the vetting process. But they do that because they want to make sure that the person they're considering as a running mate isn't a political liability. But Josh Shapiro is very entitled. So regardless of what he's done in his past, how dare anyone ask him any legitimate questions? Anyway, let's get to the details here because Shapiro's book is titled Where We Keep the Light. And in it, he describes the process of getting vetted to potentially be Kamala Harris's running mate. And according to a write-up in The Atlantic, Shapiro was already irritated by what he describes as unnecessarily contentious questions from the team vetting him to be Kamala Harris's running mate when a senior aide made one final inquiry, quote, "Have you ever been an agent of the Israeli government?" Now look, I could see that being an offensive question if we're talking about an American who just happens to be Jewish but has never had any relationship with the Israeli government whatsoever, but that's not the case when it comes to Shapiro. So the question specifically came from Joe Biden's former White House counsel, Dana Remus, who was a member of Harris's vice presidential search team. And so Shapiro says he was taken aback by the question. Oh my gosh. He writes in the book that, had I been a double agent for Israel? Was she kidding? I told her how offensive that question was. He says that Remus simply responded, well, we have to ask. And yeah, Remus is right. You do have to ask. Have you ever communicated with an undercover agent of Israel? Remus continued, according to Shapiro, who recounted, quote, if they were undercover, I responded, how the hell would I know? So he says that the campaign also asked him about his efforts to suppress pro-Palestinian activism on college campuses, which he, told them he stood by. And then at another point in the book, he wrote about the vetting process that, it nagged at me that their questions weren't really about substance. Rather, they were questioning my ideology, my approach, my worldview. In other words, they were questioning you about the substance. If you're searching for a running mate, aren't you supposed to ask the candidate, these questions? Like, what's your worldview? What are your values? Oh, God forbid, Josh Shapiro, you can't do that. You can't do that. He's very offended by those questions. Anyway, then he asks, I wondered whether these questions were being posed to just me, the only Jewish guy in the running, or if everyone who had not held a federal office was being grilled about Israel in the same way. Well, it depends, Josh. Were the other, potential candidates for VP individuals who worked for the Israeli government or volunteered for the IDF or worked for the Israeli embassy? These are genuine questions because you did. And so since you did, the campaign wanted to know, is there anything at play here that could serve as a political liability? It's easy, it's simple. You don't have to be a perpetual victim. I'm sure similar probing questions were asked of other candidates. In fact, I know that for a fact, and we'll get to that in just a second. But I don't remember Tim Walz whining about probing questions. I don't remember him, complaining about how there's a target on his back as a white American. He acted like an adult. You, on the other hand, are essentially smearing Kamala Harris, I guess, to sell books and make yourself a perpetual victim, which you're not. This is so pathetic. So, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, who is also Jewish, was actually among the finalists in this search for Harris's running mate. But ultimately, Kamala personally interviewed Josh Shapiro, Senator Mark Kelly from Arizona, and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz in the final stages of this whole process. And it's possible the Harris campaign's vetting team specifically asked Shapiro about Israel, not because of his religion, but because, of his own personal history. So back in college, he actually wrote an opinion piece titled "Peace Not Possible," and this is for the University of Rochester student newspaper. Okay, peace not possible, interesting. Okay, so this is in September of 1993. So in the piece, Governor Shapiro argued that a two-state solution, allowing Palestinians a chance at self-determination, it wouldn't bring peace to the Middle East. No. Now, many decades later, I guess we got a chance to see what Shapiro's path to peace really looks like. Is there peace in the Middle East? No, there isn't. And there never will be, as long as we continue kowtowing to the Israeli government. But nonetheless, he wrote that Palestinians will not coexist peacefully. They do not have the capabilities to establish their own homeland and make it successful, even with the aid of Israel and the United States. They are too battle-minded to be able to establish a peaceful homeland of their own. Let us not forget that Israeli IDF soldiers were caught on surveillance footage gang raping a Palestinian prisoner. And then when there was a possibility of consequences for, gang raping someone in their custody, there were protests against it among the Israeli people. And later, one of those rapists was celebrated on an Israeli television show. So tell me again about how bad the Palestinians are and how they're just not capable of being peaceful individuals, how there's something wrong in Palestinian society. Now, he described the Arab world in this opinion piece, in this student paper, as fractious, and wrote that the then Palestinian leader, it was Yasser Arafat at the time, was in danger of being assassinated by his fellow belligerent Arabs. Itzhak Rabin, by the way, was actually assassinated by an Israeli member of the Likud party, or an adherent of the Likud party, I should say. And it was because Rabin wanted a two-state solution. He wanted to pursue that because he thought that was the only path to peace. But clearly, significant portion of Israeli society not in favor of that, because God forbid you allow Palestinians their own land, their own country, their own chance of governing themselves without interference from Israel and the US government. So in that same op-ed, he also said that he was a former volunteer in the Israeli army. Kind of relevant, right? I mean, if I were running for president and I was considering Josh Shapiro, I would ask similar questions, especially considering the fact that he volunteered for the IDF. Shapiro's spokesperson told the Times of Israel back in 2024, while he was in high school, Josh Shapiro was required to do a service project. Really, he was required? Why? Service project, which he and several classmates completed through a program that took them to a kibbutz in Israel, where he worked on a farm and at a fishery. The program also included working on service projects on an Israeli army base. At no time was he engaged in any military activities. So that was a statement back in 2024, kind of defending his volunteering for a foreign military. At the end of the day, that's what he did. He volunteered to be part of a foreign military. But don't ask him any questions about it, even if that could serve as a political liability in the future. Shapiro also says that his views have evolved since he was 20 years old. I mean, whose don't? I mean, all of our views, not all of our views, but our views do change to evolve and change as we grow, right? He says that he's now supportive of a two-state solution, when it's politically convenient to say that. And his campaign to tamp down pro-Palestinian protesters, that didn't happen in 1993. That actually happened, last year. So in August of 2025, Ben Binde, who is from the Chronicle of Higher Education, published a report about Shapiro's behind-the-scenes efforts at basically squashing protests at the University of Pennsylvania. Hundreds of unseen docs indicate Josh Shapiro gained an unprecedented level of influence at Penn, sought to ban its main pro-Palestinian group, so just ban the group altogether, whether they're protesting it or not, and had a partnership with a significant pro-Israel group on campus, unsurprising, okay? So he also came out in support of a bill that would punish colleges and universities that boycott and divest from Israel. A little bit of a problem. Why do the students at that university have to see the money that they pay in tuition get invested in a genocidal country like Israel, or defense contractors that aid and abet Israel's genocide? I mean, look, we're just here to build Israel's empire, of course, but don't ask any questions about that. Now, on the other hand, he's also been a vocal critic of the war in Gaza and of Benjamin Netanyahu in particular. He called him one of the worst leaders of all time. So, just a little something for the people who have an issue with atrocities, genocide, mass slaughter, killing of innocents. On top of which, by the way, Josh Shapiro was actually not the only candidate for VP who was confronted with probing questions. So CNN reported that Minnesota Governor Tim Walz was asked by the vetting team if he had ever been an agent of China, which I think is a totally legitimate question to ask him. So that was prompted by aides reviewing the multiple trips that Walz had taken to China before he decided to run for office. So that was the same line of questioning that Shapiro had to deal with, only we're talking about China here as opposed to Israel. And that's according to 4 people who were involved with the process, which led to top lawyer Dana Remus asking Shapiro if he had ever been an agent of Israel. Like, guys, we're talking about picking a running mate. And so you gotta cross your T's and dot your I's, because if you don't, and there is a political liability you didn't catch, that could sink your entire campaign. Like, the fact that Josh Shapiro is salty about that is insane to me and incredibly entitled. And ultimately, the Harris campaign decided against Shapiro because he felt entitled to that spot. He felt entitled to being the running mate. He thought it was already said and done. He was measuring the curtains. That would annoy me too. I probably wouldn't pick him for that reason. So finally, I'm just gonna go to this. A person close to Remus explained her line of questioning, saying, the crux of vetting is asking uncomfortable and even far-fetched questions, especially ones that could be raised by your opponents. Have you ever had an affair? Have you ever embezzled state funds? Have you ever been an agent for another country? The point isn't that you believe any of it to be true. It's that the subject needs to be on record with definitive answers. Yeah. Unsurprisingly, this story has led to the leader of the Anti-Defamation League, Jonathan Greenblatt, accusing the Harris campaign of anti-Semitism, blah, 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 blah. Same. I'm sick of it, it's stupid. You're not entitled to being treated differently from everyone else because you're Jewish. I'm sorry, you're just not. Okay, that was a totally okay line of questioning given Shapiro's past work for the Israeli government and military. It's that simple. So, sorry. But like these intimidation tactics, right? Coming out and calling people anti-Semitic when no such anti-Semitism exists. It's wearing thin on people. So maybe cut that out and take a little bit of ownership of your own past and why anyone would ask you these questions in the first place. We gotta take a break, we'll be right back. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to our social break. Nerd Ferguson says the people that screamed fascism when they were asked to have COVID vaccine cards is now saying, why can't all the brown people just carry around all their citizenship paperwork? Yeah, I mean, look, I wouldn't say all of them, okay? I am seeing, and I'm just talking about voters. I'm not talking about people in positions of power. I am seeing a lot of, certainly libertarians, which doesn't surprise me, but a lot of Trump voters who have now turned on him because of what they're seeing. So I think it's important to be very precise, because when there are people who voted differently from you, kind of turning on the party or the individuals they voted for, it's a good opportunity to build alliances and remember that we're all Americans trying to make the best of a very broken political system. But to be fair, of course, I mean, I'm seeing a lot of people who voted for Trump absolutely love this, because it's not in their towns, it's not in their cities. It's not terrorizing the people around them, including their neighbors, their police officers, their deputies. You get the point. This is about political intimidation. This is about retaliation against your political opponents. It's not about providing a service for the American people. Are you kidding me? Art Guy says, Miller wants to terrorize people, make them respond with force as an excuse to institute martial law heading into the midterms. I suspect that to be the case as well. Obviously, that's speculation, but I mean, nothing coming from the federal government indicates to me that they want to calm the situation down. They only want things to escalate further. Spider-Man Dragon says that conference was nothing but his dementia on display. You mean today's press conference with Trump? I know. I was actually watching his press conference as it was being streamed live on like a more right-leaning YouTube channel. It just popped up on my feed, so it was the first thing I watched. And the commenters overwhelmingly are like, how long is he just gonna like ramble like this? Like, what is this? Anyway, Funkin' for Fun says, I'm gonna start wars until they give me a peace prize. Donald Trump. I know, right? So ironic. He's a child, it's crazy. All right, Killa in our Twitch sub says, the bottom line is that our democracy is basically the honor system, and if you have men that are not honorable leading it, fascism is what you get. All right, let's go to our super chats. There's so many comments. I'm gonna try to get to as many of them as I can. Michael Cotavelli says, this country will be hosting the FIFA World Cup in LA, actually, and the Olympics under this Trump administration and this ICE Gestapo. I can't imagine the crap show that these international events will become in front of the world. Let's just hope that that's not the case, but to be fair, I've learned not to be hopeful these days, because every time I'm hopeful, I'm proven wrong, and it's incredibly depressing. All right. Atmosphere, I will read your comment when we get back from the break.
Revolution without dancing is a revolution not worth having.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. Just want to read a quick super chat from Atmosphere 404, who says, I voted for Kamala even though I knew she was going to work for her donors only. Orange Man has gone way too far in his corruption. Still tired of voting for the lesser of two evils. Donors run our nation, keep exposing them, Anna. I know, I think a lot of people feel politically homeless, and that's why in this state of flux, I think it's important to just understand where the power lies and don't direct your ire against ordinary people. Try to persuade them. If they're realizing, I think I made a mistake supporting this party or this candidate or this person, try to open up lines of communication. It's the only way we get the country back. Otherwise, keeping us divided and fighting each other will only ensure that things further devolve. Okay, your fellow American is not your enemy. The enemy here is this broken political system and a president who only cares about himself, has authoritarian tendencies, and is surrounded by fascists, honestly. Stephen Miller is a fascist. Okay, and what you're seeing carried out by ICE is that's his brainchild. That's what's happening right now. Okay, let's move on. I want to talk a little bit about what Americans are experiencing after they post critical statements about Israel.
Is that your account?
I refuse to answer questions without my lawyer present. So I really don't know how to answer that question either way.
Like I said, you're not going to jail.
This is freedom of speech. This is America, right?
And
veteran.
All right. And I agree with you 100%.
That guy who consistently calls for the death of all Palestinians, that can probably incite somebody to do something radical.
Will it? Will that actually incite someone to do something radical? Basically calling out US politicians, whether they're local or federal, for defending the idea of slaughtering innocent people in Gaza? Is that gonna incite violence? Now, local police confronted a Miami Beach resident, actually a veteran, at her own home after she called out the mayor's depravity on the topic of Israel. And I really mean it when I say depravity. You'll get what I mean after I give you the details. But the interaction was over Raquel Pacheco's comment on a post by Miami Beach Mayor Stephen Maynor, in which he wrote, so this is what he wrote, and then I'll give you what her statement was. And you can decide for yourselves whether her comment on his Facebook post was so violent and so dangerous that it warranted local police knocking on her door to ask her about it. So here's what the mayor wrote. Miami Beach is a safe haven for everyone. Our city is consistently ranked by a broad spectrum of groups as being the most tolerant in the nation. So far, so good, no problem with it whatsoever. But he continues. By contrast, certain places like New York City are intentionally removing protections against select groups, including promoting boycotts of Israel/Jewish businesses. Let's pause right there. We are not forced to patronize any establishment, any business in this country. So if I decide, this business is run by Zionists who don't see the humanity of the Palestinian people and think that they deserve to be slaughtered, I'm not gonna go to their restaurant or their business. I'm not going to spend my money to help them in any way, shape, or form. And that is my right as an American. That has nothing to do with discriminating against people based on the color of their skin or any immutable traits. It has everything to do with the fact that I don't agree with their ideology. I find it immoral. I find it disgusting. So why would I spend my hard-earned dollars supporting a business that's run by a person who doesn't value human lives and thinks that everything our government should do is to benefit the foreign country of Israel? Like what? Anyway, but let me continue. Discrimination and hate against Jewish people never ends with the Jewish people. We will always stand firm against any discrimination. Now, I don't really remember him, making a big stink about other regulatory protections for other groups of people. But when it comes to Jewish people, he wants protections. I say we should have protections for all people, right? But I don't think that's what's motivating him here. No, hating Jewish people and attacking them, discriminating against them is wrong and should be punished. However, if you are critical of Israel and you choose to, let's say, join the BDS movement, if you are calling for your university to boycott and divest from Israel, that is not the same as being an anti-Semite, someone who hates Jewish people simply because they are Jewish. So in response, Pacheco, who's a former candidate for the Miami Beach City Commission and the Florida State Senate, wrote this. The guy who consistently calls for the death of all Palestinians tried to shut down a theater for showing a movie that hurt his feelings and refuses to stand up for the LGBTQ community in any way, even leaves the room when they vote on related matters. Wants you to know that you're all welcome here with 3 clown emojis. Now, I love her energy. I totally vibe with that statement. But even if you disagree with the statement, it's fine to disagree with her. Did that comment in any way justify local police in knocking on her door and asking her questions as if she had posted some sort of manifesto to carry out a mass shooting? She didn't do anything wrong. There was nothing violent at all in that statement. But here you have Cuban American police, and I think it's important to mention that they're Cuban American. I did confirm that, by the way. Knocking on her door to harass her about a comment on the mayor's post that hurt his feelings. The reason why I think it's important to mention that they're Cuban is because I'm very familiar with the Cuban community in South Florida. And one thing they love to talk about is the authoritarian regime in Cuba. They don't give you freedom of speech. You're not allowed to express yourself. But here you have 2 Cuban American cops knocking on this woman's door to harass her over her political speech. And I get it, cops are just following orders. You could have done something a little different though. Like if I were in their position, I would deliver flowers rather than be a total doofus and dweeb and show her the video, or her own post, and ask her whether that was something she posted, whether she's the person who posted it. So we're gonna get to the rest of the video in just a second. But just to clarify, Maynard has not explicitly called for the death of Palestinians. But Pacheco told the Miami Herald she was alluding to statements that he made at public meetings expressing his support for Israel and its war in Gaza, which means that translates to he supports the mass slaughter of Palestinians in Gaza. It's very simple. Like just put 2 and 2 together, it's not that hard. So her statement in essence is correct. And he also, by the way, did push for restrictions on pro-peace protesters. So essentially in other contexts, he has tried to violate the freedom of expression of Americans because he didn't like what they were expressing. Now, whether you like what she had to say or not, and to be clear, I'm fully on board. Nothing in that comment indicates that she was violent or inciting violence. Nonetheless, it appears the very sensitive mayor did send, well, we're suspecting that he's the one who sent law enforcement to her door. And so here's the rest.
You don't know if it was you?
I'm not going to answer whether that's me or not.
Okay.
The concerning part, and not concerning for the person who's posting it, when we're just trying to prevent somebody else getting agitated or agreeing with the statement, we're not saying it's true or not.
Understood.
That guy who consistently calls for the death of all Palestinians, that can probably incite somebody to do something radical. That's all we're here to talk about, and we wanted to get your side. If it was you that posted that, I would think to refrain from posting things like that, because that can get something inciting.
I appreciate your concern. I appreciate you coming out here.
Okay,
that's it.
That is it. Okay. I'm going to maintain my amendment rights to not answer the question about whether or not that's right. I hope that's understandable.
Right. We appreciate it.
Thank you as well.
Okay?
You as well. Thank you. Take care.
She handled that really, really well. She handled that perfectly. The cops though, what are you doing? So I reached out to someone with the department who was willing to speak to me on condition of anonymity because I was curious, like who sent them? Like how did this all happen? So there isn't confirmation or clarity on whether the mayor himself sent the Miami cops to this woman's door. But they did tell me that this is the BS that they're making cops go out and do. A complete waste of our time. They can post terrible crap, used a different word, but I can't say it. Something that is synonymous with crap. They can post terrible crap about cops all over social media and we can get mad, but you post about Israel and we have to go running and not hurt feelings. So apparently this is something that's going on not just in Florida, but also in Texas, because I wanted to provide one more example for you. But before I get to that, is what Pacheco said true about how he tried to shut down a pro-Palestinian movie? Yes. Last year, Maynard tried to cancel the lease of O Cinema for showing a documentary about the West Bank. But he did drop this proposal after he received considerable backlash, which makes me very happy. But again, what you just witnessed with the police knocking on this woman's door happened before. In fact, here is a video from October of last year featuring a Texas man getting a visit from local authorities.
We're here because of the comments you made online about the Jewish community. Are you
So what?
No, I'm saying, are you?
I have a freedom of speech, dude.
Yeah, no, we get that. We get that.
We gotta make sure that you're not. Do you have a warrant?
No, that's why we're here.
Yeah, you see that sign?
Yeah.
So that says no soliciting. What you're doing is basically soliciting. You understand that, right? Yeah. It means you're not welcomed here.
Okay.
Okay. Bye.
Okay.
Stay off the lawn, please.
And honestly, I think we're gonna see more and more of this. And I think these videos and how the two individuals handled the authorities is a perfect example of what you should do if you find yourself in this terrible situation where your freedom of expression is essentially being violated by our government. But I think this is gonna happen more and more. And why do I think that? Well, I mean, look, Zionists tell you exactly what they're doing and how they're gonna do it. Jonathan Greenblatt, head of the Anti-Defamation League, is a perfect example. So when they tell you who they are and what they are doing, just believe them. Here's Jonathan Greenblatt, take a look.
So last year, in partnership with Gibson Dunn, we created something called the Legal Action Network. We've assembled 50 of the top law firms in the United States to create a pro bono coterie of literally like 50,000 lawyers. And so now when you enter in an incident at ADL, it instantly gets evaluated by our AI systems. Is there a litigation opportunity? And we feed it to the lawyers to evaluate and to find someone to take the case. And we built this using our tech. Again, we have like software engineers at ADL, but we're opening it up. We've opened it up to Brandeis Center, Stand With Us, and to other great groups. So what gives me hope that we can break this paradigm? Number one, innovating and finding new ways to get ahead of the curve. Number two, creating new partnerships like with the top law firms and partnerships with other Jewish groups.
So when I say that our government is occupied or our country is occupied, this is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about our government, our elected leaders, allowing our constitutional rights to fall by the wayside in order to carry out the demands of individuals in this country and potentially abroad who don't care about this country, whose priorities, first and foremost, happen to be a foreign country. So there is this intention, and it's been carried out already, to conflate criticism of Israel with actual anti-Semitism, and I reject it. They do it in order to shut us down, in order to prevent Americans from speaking their minds about US foreign policy and how detrimental it tends to be as it favors what Israel wants over what the American people want. You can have cops knock on my door if you want. I'm never gonna shut up because I come from a people who were genocided. And no one came to Armenians' rescue. When my paternal great-grandfather was killed by the Turks, forcing my paternal great-grandmother to flee with her child in tow, march through the Syrian desert to Syria for safety, no one came to help her. She managed to survive on her own. So I'll be damned if I'm gonna allow a foreign country to trample on my constitutional rights and prevent me from criticizing them as they carry out atrocities and genocide using American resources and bombs. I'm gonna keep running my mouth. You can call me whatever you want. But I hope the people watching this right now understand that even if you don't care about this issue at all, what the story represents is the deterioration of our rights, the deterioration of what makes America distinct from other countries. We have to protect our freedom of expression, and we can't let foreign interference change that. All right, we gotta take a break. When we come back, someone's got his knickers in a twist after, well, got called out for providing cover for Trump's Epstein file cover-up. got to check in with our YouTube members. First of all, we've got Titan of Olympus 03 who gifted 5 TYT memberships. Thank you so much for the support and welcome to new members. Speaking of which, welcome to Jenna Buzz and Bobby 6060 for becoming new members. I hope you guys enjoy the bonus episode today. A lot of stories we produced but ran out of time to cover. But I really do want to talk a little bit about Tucker Carlson's latest newsletter, because it touches on something that I've been thinking about a lot. It's something known as the nuclear peace theory. It sounds crazy, sounds counterproductive, but is it? So if you're a member, you can check that out immediately after the main show. If you're not a member, tyt.com/join to become one. All right, let's go to Freestyle888 who says Ryan Grimm's interview with an Iranian protester made me really feel for them. But it's not our issue at all. Plus, Israel and US certainly don't have benevolent intentions. I watched that interview. Look, I love Drop Site News. I think that they're one of the best media organizations in this country, hands down. I trust them, I love them. I especially love Ryan Grimm. Something in my gut didn't feel right about that interview. So that's why I decided against covering it. And it's the type of story where insidious actors try to find different ways to kind of manipulate the narrative here in the US. I could be totally wrong about that, by the way. But since I'm not 100% certain, I was just like, I don't know if I really want to air this. Anyway, let's go to Box, who says, ICE agents are roaming the streets because our politicians won't let them into courts or jails. So they are in the streets and it's exponentially more dangerous. Look, I think that they should cooperate with ICE when it comes to convicted criminals, right? So you and I are on the same page about that. I just don't trust this administration at all anymore. And I don't believe them when they say that they wouldn't be doing this if these municipalities cooperated with them. I'm just keeping it real. I think that this is more about political retaliation than anything else. All right, Wallace W59 says Trump is a medieval dickweed. I will allow it. We also have Abdullah Sira who says, why was Tom Alexandrovich, that's an Israeli cybersecurity official, allowed to return home following his arrest in the US on child predation charges? We know why. But thanks for the reminder. We should probably revisit that story and see what Tommy Boy is up to these days. Anyway, let's get back to the show. We've got a lot more to share with you, including a pretty interesting moment on CNN with Scott Jennings.
Norway.
I will now do a rendition of Tim Dillon reading his sponsorships and live reads. Don't forget about our sponsor, Noble Mobile, the only phone plan that pays you to use your phone less. Get unlimited data for just $10 your first month, powered by the T-Mobile network. Plus get cash back for your unused data. Switch today at tyt.com/switch. I figured I would try that since he keeps getting sponsors after reading the live reads like that. And if it works for us, I would be elated. So we'll see if it works. Please sign up so I can see like a little bit of a bump in the signups, and I can argue that I don't really need to try during the live reads. Anyway, all right, let's get to our final story for the main show. If you're a member, stick around for the members only bonus episode because I've got a lot more to share with you. But for now, why don't we get into this?
Today marks 1 month since the Justice Department was required by law to release all of the Epstein files. So far, it's released less than 1%.
What's the punishment if they don't?
That's a great point. I mean, that's a problem.
There is none. So here's the deal. I think they should release it. I think they should follow the law. I also have no idea how long it takes to prepare this many documents for this kind of release. Counselor may have some thoughts on that, but they should follow the law. But let's not get our knickers in a twist here.
Let's not get our knickers in a twist over child rape. Why are you talking like that? It's insane.
Who is that woman? And more importantly, is she mommy? Like, that was amazing. That was so satisfying because the endlessly smug Scott Jennings was basically annihilated over his nonchalant attitude regarding the Trump administration's failure to abide by the law and release the Epstein files. Here's the thing about Scott Jennings, who, by the way, was a never Trumper at one point, but now never misses an opportunity to kiss Trump's ass. He is a bad faith actor, is not honest about anything, and more importantly, the guy is not guided by any values or principles. So if the situation were reversed and we're talking about a Democratic president, does anyone believe for a second that Scott Jennings would stop talking about it? Please. So whenever I go on Abby Phillips's show, it's like the most frustrating thing when you're talking to someone who has been inflicted by severe partisan brain rot, because you can't have an honest conversation with them. Every once in a while, you'll find an independent voice who actually wants to have a legitimate conversation and is willing to ding their own side when they do something wrong. But in the case of child rape, Scott Jennings is willing to provide cover. Yeah. So look, Congress voted unanimously, well, almost unanimously. I think there was one member of the House that voted against it, but almost unanimously to release the Epstein files, okay? But the Trump administration has only released 1% of the documents, 1%. And as we know, what they have released has been heavily redacted. So yesterday actually marked the 1 month anniversary of Congress passing that bill, and still we are waiting on the DOJ to abide by that law, because it was a bill passed into law that the administration seems to be ignoring. So Attorney General Pam Bondi, who is a joke and embarrassing, claims that they're just making efforts to protect the victims' identities. Right, and that's what's slowing them down, you see. Yeah, you see, that's what's happening here. So she explained in a letter to Paul Engelmayer, who happens to be the federal New York judge overseeing the case, there are more than 2 million documents potentially responsive to the act that are in various phases of review. This work has required and will continue to require substantial department resources. We need resources. No, you don't. That's not what this is about. Now, Bondi added that about 400 Justice Department lawyers and 100 federal document, 100 FBI document individuals tasked with document analysis are currently supporting these efforts to comply with the order to release the Epstein files. Honestly, that statement sounds like something like a child would say. Like, no, we've got 400 DOJ people and 100 FBI agents working on this. I don't believe that to be true. It's been a month. You guys have released 1% of the files and they're heavily redacted. More importantly, there's really been no explanation or rationale for the heavy redactions that took place. Let's not forget that. But there has been a little backlash from Congress, not nearly enough, not even close. For instance, last month, Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie were considering holding Pam Bondi in contempt. That hasn't happened. And even more depressing is that several congressional Republicans are now providing cover for Trump, desperately hoping the story goes away. Please go away. This isn't good. We're defending pedophiles. Yeah, it looks bad, it looks real bad. So despite what they want here, despite how badly they want the story to go away, it's not going away. So speaking with reporters last week, Lauren Boebert, who actually defied Trump in supporting the bill to release the Epstein files, has now changed her tune somewhat. She says, I don't give a rip about Epstein. Fascinating. She continues, like there's so many other things we need to be working on. Like what, Lauren? Like what are you working on, Lauren? Explain that to me. Like what are you working on? Members of Congress working on things? Other than fundraising, what are you working on? I don't give a rip about Epstein. I mean, we're just talking about child rape and trafficking of minors. Who cares? God, it's so embarrassing, man. Talk to somebody else about it. It's no longer in my hands. The federal government is taking a look at the bill that you helped pass, and they're like, we don't give a crap. We're not gonna do anything about it. We're gonna release 1% of the documents, ensure that they're heavily redacted, and then hope that the story goes away. It's amazing. Look, some have even started to defend the administration, like pathetic little weasels. So Representative Anna Paulina Luna, for instance, who worked with Democrats, to her credit, she worked with Democrats on a House Oversight and Government Reform Committee investigation into the Epstein files. But now she's changed her tune a little bit. I don't know what's going on. Someone blackmailing you, Anna? What's going on here? This is what she says. So she's now more focused on holding Bill and Hillary Clinton in contempt of Congress for not honoring the panel's subpoena to testify about Epstein. How about you do both? How about you do both? Yeah? No? Okay. Pressed on the delay in releasing more records, Luna said the initial deadline was not realistic, and I'm not going to rush the process on that. We're going to get them. Okay. James Comer provided cover. Oh, they're gonna abide. Don't worry, they're gonna do it. Please, please, please don't worry about it. We just gotta give them time. We gotta give them time. And look, Sean Ryan, who is a conservative who supported the Trump administration, voted for Trump. He's not buying these excuses. Let's take a quick look at that.
They are legitimately, proactively protecting pedophiles.
They are protecting pedophiles at this point.
By redacting the abusers' names. The White House, listen up everybody, the White House is protecting pedophiles. You hear that? They're protecting pedophiles. That's what the fuck they're doing.
True. I made similar statements when Piers Morgan asked me about Trump's decision to flip the bird at a Ford employee after the Ford employee called him a, pedophile protector. Let's take a look. That vile gesture to an American worker helps you kind of visualize what he actually thinks about Americans. That's what I think.
I mean, the worker was screaming at him, pedophile protector.
Yeah, because he is. He is a pedophile protector. Has still to comply with the order to release the Epstein files. We got one batch that's heavily redacted. Supposedly more was on the way. No, he wants to engage in the cover-up. I mean, I think that's been abundantly clear from day one. And what is that cover-up about? It's about covering up for a pedophile and his co-conspirators. So it is what it is. It's true.
And I do feel that people on the left would benefit collectively from not losing their minds constantly about everything Trump does, because there's enough stuff you can go after Trump about which is legitimately worthy of attention, energy, criticism, and debate, without going over every single thing he's
the Epstein files.
Well, yeah, I agree.
I think that's worth it.
Yeah, Anna,
right? Covering up for pedophiles, that's worth it.
I totally agree.
You better agree. Otherwise, super sus. But unfortunately, it seems like partisan brain rot has taken over some portion of the Republican electorate, right? Some of them take the marching orders from the Trump administration and are no longer calling for the release of the Epstein files. So ask yourself what you're normalizing by doing that. You are normalizing our federal government providing cover for serial child rapists and also engaging in a lack of transparency that hurts the American people and further victimizes Epstein's victims. That's the reality of the situation. Trump promised transparency and well, we have gotten a lot of transparency when it comes to his depravity and willingness to just globetrot and take resources for himself all around the world. But we want some transparency when it comes to this. And the real question is, why? Why the cover up? How implicated is Trump? Is that what this is about? And more importantly, now that we know without a shadow of a doubt that Epstein was working for foreign governments, especially Israel, is that what's motivating Trump in engaging in this cover up? Inquiring minds want to know. But for now, we're gonna go to our bonus episode for our members. We'll see you there. What's up, everyone? Welcome to our members only bonus episode. This is behind a paywall. So for members who are wondering, is there something extra we get, on top of supporting a show to be independent? I do want to use our Wednesday bonus episode. I know today's not Wednesday, I know today's Tuesday, but Cenk is out, which is why I did a solo show. But moving forward, Wednesdays, we're gonna have a bonus episode for our members behind a paywall. And I can do whatever I want with it, so that's exciting. Sometimes I'll do interviews, sometimes I'll cover some stories that I saved specifically for the bonus. And I wanted to start off with this because, in the last segment for the main show, I talked a little bit about Scott Jennings, a CNN contributor, getting confronted over his willingness to provide cover for the Trump administration as they fail to follow the law and release the Epstein files. So with that in mind, let's get to some of the videos we didn't have time for. Let's start with that cold open.
Today marks 1 month since the Justice Department was required by law to release all of the Epstein files. So far, it's released less than 1%.
What's the punishment if they don't?
That's a great point. I mean, that's a problem.
There is none. So here's the deal. I think they should release it. I think they should follow the law. I also have no idea how long it takes to prepare this many documents for this kind of release. Counselor may have some thoughts on that, but they should follow the law. But let's not get our knickers in a twist here.
Let's not get our knickers in a twist over child rape. Why are you talking like that? It's insane.
That was amazing. And if you're wondering who that was, Lee McGowan, the host of Politics Girl or the Politics Girl podcast, gave Scott Jennings, a CNN contributor, a masterclass on why it's a big deal that the Trump administration isn't following the law in releasing the Epstein files. Congress passed a bill, it's now law, and it indicates that Trump's Department of Justice must release the Epstein files. And even though this happened a month ago, the administration has only released 1% of said documents, and of course they're heavily redacted. And so Scott Jennings provides cover for the Trump administration. That's like what his whole role is. I don't know what his personal values or principles are. They never really come through in any way. Because here's the thing, I know without any doubt that if Biden were in the middle of this Epstein cover-up controversy, Scott Jennings is probably gonna handle it a little differently, right? Because he is part and parcel of what has destroyed this country, partisan brain rot to a point where you are now defending a president who's providing cover for a serial child rapist and his co-conspirators. That's what Jennings is doing. And rather than respond to it politely, you have McGowan, who's disgusted with him, probably fed up with how unbelievably and unbearably smug he is. He's the kind of guy who hotboxes his own car with his own farts and loves it. That's the kind of guy he is, right? So anyway, during this panel on Abby Phillips' show, criminal defense, let's actually go to the other video featuring Lee McGowan. So she, again, is the host of Politics Girl and did give Scott Jennings a masterclass on this issue. Let's take a look.
They should follow the law, but let's not get our knickers in a twist here.
Let's not get our knickers in a twist over child rape. Why are you talking like that? It's insane. Like, it's insane. The Epstein files is a multinational, multi-generational child and woman sex trafficking ring. So your attitude right now, you're sort of like, well, shucks, devil begun, is just horrifying to me. Every woman in the world that is watching this, why are you acting like you have no idea what's happening here? Scott,
He asked me a question about following the law.
And what
I
I'm
said they
saying
should
to you
follow
is
the
your
law.
attitude. Yes, and they're not following the law. They're 30 days late on following law, and they didn't explain why they redacted the first things in the first place, which they were also supposed to do.
I know.
Listen,
you
at
have
this
a strong
point, this is
opinion
not.
about it, and
I have a strong
respect that.
opinion about it because it is a
But I think they
disgusting
should do it
policy
as
that they are
fast as
doing
they
this.
can.
They are hiding it. It is not the behavior of innocent people, and everything that is in these files it could bring an entire house down.
It can bring an entire house down. That's probably why the Trump administration is engaging in the cover-up. You know, his buddies might be implicated, very likely are implicated in the Epstein files. So he might be implicated in the Epstein files. That much we don't know for sure. But we do know that his administration, his second term at least, started off with his cabinet members like maniacally like searching the files to see how many times his name shows up in them. But anyway, back to Scott Jennings. Oh, you know, he should follow the law, but you know, not a big deal. No, it's a huge deal. It's a huge deal. Because this issue in particular shows you how disingenuous the Trump administration really is. How they will entice voters on something that they care deeply about, right? Which is the release of the Epstein files, and then pull the rug out from underneath them, refuse to comply by law in this case, and release the files so the American people can have access to what congressional lawmakers voted in favor of the Trump administration doing. I want to go to one more video here. This is defense trial attorney Stacey Schneider, who was also on the panel and did jump in. Let's take a look.
What's really wrong here is on Christmas Eve, while everybody's traveling and not paying attention, the government announced that now there were suddenly 5.2 million documents in the Epstein file that they had to go through. It would have been nice had they disclosed that while Congress was voting on the law, while it was in discussion, but now we're surprised that there are 5.2 million documents when in July of 2025, the DOJ and the FBI issued a public memo saying, we reviewed all our investigative material on Jeffrey Epstein, and we've done a thorough, exhaustive investigation, and there's nothing left to see here. They seemed to know then what they had, but all of a sudden now that it's law, they don't know what they had.
Yeah, and look, they didn't bring it up between when the law was passed and they were required to release it, all new information.
Exactly.
The law does say shall. We'll see if they do.
Perfectly said. Now, in response, Scott Jennings had nothing else to say. So I'll just end on the fact that McGowan's ponytail is fire. Okay, that is a good ponytail. Anyway, let's move on to some other news. I actually wanted to talk a little bit about something provocative. I know people are gonna be like freaked out by it, but just keep an open mind as I discuss something known as the nuclear peace theory. It's an actual theory in the world of political science. And Tucker Carlson's newsletter actually touched on it. So let's discuss. Tucker Carlson's recent newsletter asks a pretty provocative question that's sure to draw the wrath of Mark Levin and the rest of the neocon establishment, which means I'm all over it, I love it, I wanna talk about it. So his latest morning newsletter is titled, Could a Nuclear Iran Stabilize the Middle East? And you should know that privately I've been raising this question because there is a political theory in the world of political science known as the political peace theory. And we're going to visit that and discuss it in just a moment. But first I wanna kind of go through the arguments made in this newsletter And you can decide for yourselves if you think it makes any sense. So, Tucker Carlson notes that there are all sorts of countries now that have nuclear weapons, right? Unhinged genocidal regimes, for instance, like Israel. Now they have a clandestine nuclear program that they have not entered into the non-proliferation treaty because they're above the law, and apparently we operate in a global double standard where they get to do whatever they want. Their treachery is never punished. But there are other countries like North Korea, for instance. North Korea has nuclear weapons and has had nuclear weapons since about 2006. Is anyone up at night, or rocking themselves in fetal position in bed every night over North Korea using a nuclear weapon against us? No. And that's kind of the point that was made in this newsletter. So Tucker cites warnings that presidents and cabinet members gave in the early 2000s about how Kim Jong-il, so that's Kim Jong-un's father, Kim Jong-il, if he obtains a nuclear weapon, it's so dangerous, the world's gonna end. Well, that included William Perry, who happened to be Bill Clinton's defense secretary. And here's what he said in 2003, 3 years prior to North Korea obtaining a nuclear weapon. The nuclear program now underway in North Korea poses an imminent danger of nuclear weapons being detonated in American cities, detonated, okay? So just simply having access to the nuclear weapons, the North Koreans, they're so barbaric that they'll immediately use it against American cities. Okay. Now, Tucker writes that those warnings sound pretty scary, right? But the past 20 years have proven them unwarranted. North Korea became a known nuclear nation in October of 2006, and its proliferation has yielded a total of 0 nuclear strikes on America, the West, or any other country. The fear-mongering was for nothing. Well, if the political establishment in the United States isn't engaging in fear-mongering, what else would they do? I mean, yes, fundraising, I get that. But other than that, literally, what else would they do with their time? So Tucker then connects that history with the very similar warnings that we are hearing today, especially in regard to Iran, from people like Benjamin Netanyahu, who says that there is only one difference between Nazi Germany and Israel. Nazi Germany and the Islamic Republic of Iran. Iran is first seeking atomic weapons, and once it has them, will then start a world war. But Tucker asks America's leaders, to maybe consider some, important questions before engaging in a regime change war with Iran in order to prevent them from accessing or obtaining nuclear weapons. First, he asks, what are the chances Iran would actually launch a nuclear attack? And I think that's a legitimate question, of course. But he argues it's unlikely. No country in the so-called axis of evil, that's Iraq, Iran, and North Korea, has ever deployed a nuke because doing so would be an act of suicide. Yes, mutually assured destruction, right? You launch a nuke, there will be retaliation from another nuclear power. And the world ends. It's just Armageddon. And it's not, of course, Western countries only that have nuclear weapons. Pakistan has nuclear weapons, North Korea has nuclear weapons.